Chant of light, canticle of Andraste. Andraste 1, address and greeting. Hear now, Andraste, daughter of Brona, spear maid of Almarta, valiant heart sing, of victory waiting yet to be claimed from the still bonded forges of Baron Tavine. Andraste seeks an end to the suffering of the Almari. Great heroes beyond counting raised oak and iron gaze chains of Northmen, and walk the lonely road warm roads evermore. Mighty of the warmest of heart, rendered to dust, bitter is sorrow. Ate raw and often poisoned the weakness and does not kill. Why must the shield of Almar shatter, neath bond and blade? To the wisest I sang, to the winged cupbearers, of the tall sky vaulting, to the wintry halls of strong mountain kings, where in days forgotten voices there raised might be the gift, answer, though seek and find. The Almighty gods do not answer. From the sky-tearing peaks of the sacred mountain to the sacred stepped roots of the ancient oak trees, a lonesome choir I sang, failing unanswered. Voice on the wind returning, answering no more. Andraste despairs for her people. In heart's drumming I heard footsteps thundering. Shield brothers and spear sisters distant raised. Blade to shackle bearer, valiant of spirit, blazing like star shine, to the battle they charged. None to return to the land of their mothers, by cruel magic taken, ice, lightning, and flame. Should for all the reason laments ring the sky vaults, should dirges all sages and historians replace, by God's forsaken, fate emptied of hope. Wounded I fell, by the grief arrow studded, never to heal, death for me to come. The Maker appears to Andraste. Eyes sorrow blinded in darkness, unbroken thereupon the mountain a voice answered my call. Heart that is broken beats still unceasing. An ocean of sorrow does nobody drown. You have forgotten, spear maid of Almar, within my creation none are alone. Lo, my eyes opened, shining before me, the greater than mountains towering mighty, hand outstretched, stars glistening as jewels. From rings pone his fingers and crown upon his brow. Short shattering fear filled me overflowing. Grandeur of godhood no gaze shall defile. Trembling I called out, forgive me, Most High. I should sing your name to the heights of the heavens, but I knew it not, and must be silent. The wellspring of all said now remember. Long have they turned to idols and tales, away from my light in darkness unbroken. The last of my children, shrouded in night. Word fell away, then misty in memory, cross vale into valley of dreams, a vision of all worlds waking and slumbering, spirit immortal to me appeared. Look to my work, said the voice of creation, see what my children in arrogance wrought. There I saw the black city, towers all stained, gates once brought, golden forever shut. heaven filled with silence. Then did I all know, and crossed my heart with unbearable shame. Andraste begs the Maker to give mortals another distance, another chance. Then did I see the world spread before me, sky-reaching mountains array as a crown, kingdoms like jewels, glistening gemstones, strung across the earth as a necklace of pearl. All this is yours, spake the Maker. Join me in heaven and sorrow no more. World-making glory, I cried out in sorrow. How shall your children apology make? We have forgotten in arrogance, stumbling. Only a light in the darkened time breaks. Call to your children, teach us your greatness. What has been forgotten has not yet been lost. Long was his silence, for it was broken. For you, song weaver, once more I will try to my children venture, crying wisdom. If they but listen, I shall return. Andraste 7. Let blade pass through the flesh, let me blood touch the ground. Let my cries touch their heart, let mine be the last sacrifice. Andraste 7. For those who oppose thee shall know the wrath of heaven. Field and forest shall burn, the seas shall rise and devour them. The wind shall tear their nations from the face of the earth. Lightning shall rain down from the sky. They shall cry out to their false gods and find silence. Andraste 14. Here lies the abyss, the well of souls. From these emerald waters doth life begin anew. Come to me, child, and I shall embrace you. In my arms lies eternity. Chant of Light, Canticle of Apotheosis. Apotheosis 1. The aftermath of the Valerian fields. Sweet victory song rising from the lips of the vanquishers. The host of Chant, the clans of Almari. 1,000 free men held aloft blade and spear. To the Maker gave thanks, but for every one who stood and sang the praise of him. 2. Lay at their feet, seeking the light eternal. Mafrath's heart grew cold as he looked upon the field of the dead and heard the chant of glory, glory, hail to the Maker. Most high hail to Andraste, prophet and liberator. Light of the world, looked upon our work, Maker, and rejoice. And Mathras forsook the celebrations of his people, and then apart, talking, not even his Aegis, his shield brother. In the solitude of the night, Mathrath dwelled in his bitterness, and the light which burned within him extinguished. Mafarath meets with Asaron. The Lord of the Almari set forth his most trusted runner to the gates of Mafarath to call the Archon to parley, that like the leaves after a long winter, peace too might return to the land. Asaron was filled to overflowing with doubt that the offer might be true. Yet did he reply with message of his own, and to arrange to meet with the war chief. Mafrath took with him his Aegis, and arrived at the appointed place, where Hessaron waited with his guard. And the two leaders of the army spoke, guarded in riddles, and came to an understanding between them. The peace bore a heavy price, which must be paid in blood. And they returned to their own people and said nothing.
Camp here.
Andraste prepares to lay siege to Mithrathis. The armies of the Maker marched to the heart of the Imperium. They looked upon those gates guarded by juggernauts of old, and despaired, for surely neither army nor God could oppose such might. Andraste sermoned to the army. So Andraste said to her followers, "You who stand before the gates, you who have followed me into the heart of evil, the fear of death is in your eyes, its hand upon your throat. Raise your voices to the heavens. Remember, not alone do we stand on the field of battle. The Maker is with us. His light shall be our banner. And we shall bear it through the gates, the city, and deliver it to our brothers and sisters awaiting their freedom within those walls. At last, the light shall shine upon all of creation, if we were only strong enough to carry it." And the armies of Andraste raised their voices, singing a hymn of praise to the Maker, and feared no more. When Andraste went apart to seek the Maker's wisdom for battle to come. Mafrath delivers Andraste to Hessaron. Mafrath went to his wife and said, "The hills lie in a silver pool, where they say the voice of heaven can be heard most clearly. Let us go together and hear the Maker's will." Andraste went with Maker and the Aegeus to the silver pond. As she knelt in prayer, the servants of the Archon surrounded them. Spears raised, Andraste drew her sword and pierced one man through the heart. But Mafrath, with a blow of his axe, struck the blade from her hands, and it fell to the ground, where it landed. Tears swelled in the land. The Aegeus faltered. His hands could not draw against his own lord, but neither could he be stayed as his prophet was betrayed. Unarmed he stood between Andraste and the Tevinters, and a spear through his chest as he fell. With neither blade nor shield, Andraste gave herself up to her enemies, and Mafrath bound his wife's hands and delivered her to the Archon to be put to death. Apotheosis 2. Andraste is brought forth in chains as the sun rose on the army of the faithful. The gates of the city parted, and legion descended upon the land. As the shadows of a distant storm darkens the sun, and yet the forefront of the host rode the Archon himself, sword in hand, and at his side, by a heavy change-robed, the prophet. Hope abandoned the armies of the faithful at the sight of their lady in chains, and a terrible cry rose from the field, like the wailing of lost children. Before the host of the faithful and all of the Imperium, servants of Andraste assembled great days at the feet of the juggernauts, and there built a pyre twice the height of a man, the prophet in chains placed on a stake in the center. A devoted disciple dies. The liberator drew the blade at his side and charged the pyre, the freedom of the prophet, before his eyes. But from the legion came a storm of arrows, blacker than night, and the disciple who had fought side by side with the lady fell. with 100 of his people. Among the Almari, 10,000 swords fell to the ground in a chorus of defeat. Andraste calls out. The legion doused the pyre around her with lamp oil, as Andraste called in a great voice, Maker of the world, forgive them. They have lived too long in shadow. Without your light, guide them. Be with your children now, O Maker. The Theron lights the pyre. The Archon stood upon the dais and declared, Today I end this war, and will beat, and by will alone draw fire from the air to set the pyre aflame. The army of the faithful gathered before the gates of the city, wept openly, and from among them the voices rised. And thereby, in Theron before Andraste withered in flame, though the fire developed her like a shroud, the heat of the blaze reached across the field. Andraste was silent and did not cry, and the legionnaires who stood guard nearby were shaken and began to whisper among themselves, Is she truly the servant of a god? Sauron begins to doubt. The Archon looked upon what he had brought. The flames of Andraste's pyre grew ever closer to heaven, and the heat drove even the bravest of his legion back, and his heart wavered, for though Andraste did not cry out, yet did he see her suffering. Merciless, the fire did not spare her mortal flesh, while Sauron heard, over the roar of the bonfire, cheering of his magisters. He also heard the distant song of the faithful mourning their lady. As Sauron takes pity on Andraste, before any among his advisors could draw breath, as Sauron took blade to hand and himself dared the fire that consumed the prophet. With one swift strike he pierced her heart. Andraste dies. The sky grew dark, and the ground began to tremble as if in mortal dead. The crowd before the gates, both Tevinter and faithful, fell silent. The heavens wept, and yet no rain could extinguish the flame. For now was a funeral pyre when swept across the city. Like a terrible hand in rage, the Tevinters who witnessed this said, Truly the gods are angered. In sorrow the crowds dispersed the army of the faithful southward to the land which they had come. The legion of Tevinter hid inside the walls of their city and watched in fear the sky in fear. Havard returned. The sky wept as though it had never stopped, and the footsteps left armies to count the sea. Andraste's pyres burned to embers and grew dark. On hands and knees, wounded to death, Havard, once the Aegis of Mafrath crawled to the deep. The royal shield broken in pieces found only ash, only left to the wind and rain. And Havard wept and took the ashes still hot from the fire and pressed them to his heart. Andraste appears to Havard. His ears filled with song from multitudes raised in chorus. Before his eyes the dark sky is parted. Andraste stepped forth, clothed in starlight and morning. When moonlight stood before him, he was afraid. The lady knelt at his side, saying, Arise, Argus of the faith, you are not forgotten. Neither man nor maker shall forget your bravery, so long as I remember. And at this, his wounds healed, he stood up, gathered the ashes, and carried them to the lands of the Almari. away from sorrow forever. This is Dragon of Night 751. This was been some parts of the Chant of Light from the Dragon Age video game series. The gameplay was Dragon Age Inquisition. And remember to like, share, and if you feel like, subscribing. Dragon of Night 751, signing off.